Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video, which is hard to believe is going to be the last TBR video of 2024. I can't believe that the next time I do my TBR, we'll be doing it for the first month of 2025, which is just crazy for me. I feel like the beginning of the year always goes so slow, and then by the end of the year, it feels like each month lasted like a week or two. Anyway, I'm so excited to see what is going to end up on this TBR. I have some holiday books that I'm hoping to get onto it. We'll see how the game treats me this month. The last 2 months it hasn't been the nicest, giving me over 10 books each month. But hopefully this month, it being the end of the year, it being December, the game will be a little bit more nice, but we're just gonna have to see. So before we start playing the game, let's go quickly through the November TBR, see how I did. I think there was a total of 13 books on my November TBR. So here we go. All the books are right here, and I'm gonna go through this very quickly. So we had a book by an author from a different continent. I read The Dark is Rising. We had a book with food in the title, and I read Love, Sugar, Magic, A Dash of Trouble. Then we had a book with an illustrated cover, and I read Bad Blood for that prompt. Then we had a book written in a different decade, and I had The Boy at the Bookstore or A Study of Drowning. I did not read either of those two. Then we had a book set on a different continent, and I read The Thursday Murder Club for that prompt. Then we had a book with a number in the title. I am reading The 13 Problems by Agatha Christie, so that is technically a completed prompt. Next up, I had a author's debut novel. I read My Roommate is a Vampire for that one. Next up, we had a book from our new release jar, which was Bull Moon Rising. I did not get to this one. Then we had a book with a season in the title, and I had Winter Solstice. I'm actually listening to the Audible book for this one, so technically complete. Then we had a cover with a holiday theme, and I did read Wicked Wisteria for that. Then we had a book from our 2024 jar, Casino Royale. I did read that one. And then we had a book from our series jar, which was The Red Squirrels of Magic. Did not get to that. Then lastly, our book from our award-winning jar, and we had Kalki, and I did not get to that one either. So obviously, I did not complete this TBR. I feel like I did a pretty good job at it, though, considering how many books were on it, and considering how many extra books I read in my cozy reading game. If you haven't checked out that video, definitely go check it out, because that game was not nice to me. But because I ended up not completing this TBR, we will add another boarding pass to our game board, and we'll just have to see how that goes. For those who are new to watching this TBR, if I land on a boarding pass, that means I have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game board while keeping every book I have already accumulated from that point, up to that point. But I am going to be optimistic here because it is December and the game has been not so nice to me the last 2 months. So it's about time we have a nice TBR game. So let's bring up the tokens we have to randomize. And then let's go ahead and randomize them and see what we get. So these aren't too bad of a randomization. The time for vacation and the boarding passes are all in pretty good spots. So let's go ahead, set up the game board, and then do our first roll. All right, so we did our first roll. We rolled a 6, and of course we ended up on a time for vacation, but it could have been worse. It could have been a boarding pass. We only had to move back 3 spots, so not terrible for our first roll of the game. But that does mean we have to choose a book out of our series jar. So let's bring that up and see what we get for our first book for December. So in this jar are 37 series with the covers of the next book I have to read in each series. So let's see what we will get. All right, we're going to go with this one here. And our very first book for the last TBR of 2024 is going to be, The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu. So this is book 2 in the Remembrance of Earth series, I think is what the series is called. The first book is The 3 Body Problems that ended up winning, I think, a bunch of awards. I read that book, and it is a very interesting book and very confusing as well. So I'm a little uncertain how the second book is going to go, but I do want to finish the series because it's kind of been like a intriguing plot. So we'll see. So this is the first book on our December TBR. So yeah, like I said, we'll see how this one is. I think I have read that the books get a little bit better after that first one and maybe a lot less confusing. So we'll find out. So The Dark Force will be our first book on our December TBR. All right, let's bring up our game board and do our second roll. So for our second roll, we rolled a 1. This is giving me reminiscence of my cozy reading game. It's not bringing back good memories. Hopefully this is not the way this game is going to go. But we did land on brown, which is my favorite color to land on. So this is our brown bag, and I know it's green, but it has a brown owl. I didn't have a brown bag, so that's what we're going with. And in here are all our seasonal prompts that change every month. We didn't get this bag last month, and I was kind of sad, so I'm very happy to be choosing a prompt out here. So in here, we have prompts that have to do with December. Technically, we're still doing fall, because winter technically doesn't start till like December 21st, 22nd. And then we also have some astrological sign prompts, which are Capricorn and Sagittarius. So let's go ahead and see what we get for our first prompt of the game. All right, let's mix these up good. Hopefully we get a good winter one, like a Christmas one for December, so I can get some of those books on this TBR. But we'll have to see. We could get a fall one, which is fine as well. All right, so let's split the deck right there. And our first prompt for December is a autumn prompt, and it is a paranormal book. All right, let's see what we got for paranormal book. All right, so paranormal to me feels like ghosts or vampires, things of that nature. So the book I'm going to go with is called Ghost in the Snow. This is by Tamara Seiler Jones. And this is actually a reread for me. I've read it before, but I feel like this is perfect for this prompt because we got the paranormal, but we also got snow. So it's like the perfect fit for December. So this is kind of a fantasy thriller book. It follows Dubrick, who is head of security at Castle Fedora. And what is occurring right now at the castle is that there is a silent killer afoot that is killing servant girls and leaving behind no clues and no witnesses, except for the ghosts of his victims, And it just so happens that Dubrick has the ability to be able to see these ghosts. So now Dubrick must solve this crime, and at the risk of not only his own life, but also the entire kingdom, which could end up being thrust into war depending on the outcome of this investigation. So it's been a long time since I've read this, so I'm excited to read it again and see if I enjoyed it as much as I did the first time around. So that will be our physical book for this prompt, Ghost in the Snow by Tamara Seiler Jones. Let me see if I have any Kindle books on this month's TBR that fit this prompt. All right, so the only book I could really find that fit this paranormal prompt is Wisteria Wonders by Angela Pepper. This is about a witch, and a witch I consider paranormal as well. And this is actually the third book in her Wisteria Witches series. I had read the second book in November. And so far, I've really been enjoying this series. They are very quick reads and just kind of like entertaining, fun mystery book. So the book follows Zara, who in the first book ended up moving with her and her daughter to Wisteria. And there she ends up finding that she's actually a witch, that her family has a long line of witches, and that she now has these witch powers. And her aunt, who happens to live in Wisteria, is kind of helping her come to terms with them and teaching her how to use her witch powers. And each book kind of follows a mystery that needs to be solved, and she ends up solving it using her witch powers. I keep saying that a lot. So like I said, it's just a fun book. I don't know the plot in this particular one, but I definitely enjoyed the first two, so I'm looking forward to reading the third. So that will be our Kindle option for our paranormal book, and it again is Wisteria Wonders by Angela Peppers. All right, so not too bad, not starting off too bad. Let's bring up the game board and see how we do for our third roll of the game. we didn't do too well. We did get a 8, and that means we landed on a boarding pass. So we will be going back to the beginning of the board. At least it was early on in the game. It could have been worse, but we do have to choose another series book. So let's pull out that series jar and see what we get for our third book on our TBR. All right. Hopefully we get a nice, easier book than our first draw went. Okay, here we go. There's so many in here. Oh wait, this is the wrong jar. This is actually the Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning jar. All right, this is better. This actually has the right number of books. All right, let's see what we get. For real this time. All right, we're going to go with this one here. And our third book on our December TBR is going to, oh, City of Glass. So this one we are pulling out because we are reading that in a different order. So that one doesn't count. Actually, I think I already read that book. All right, let's try this again. I have not been taking out the books that I've read because that's going to take way too long to go through all these jars. So if we get a book I already read, we are just going to redraw. All right, let's try this again. Our December book is going to be... oh my gosh. It's going to be The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. So I actually had this book on my January TBR, and I think I got about 200 pages in before I ended up stopping reading it just because I had so many other books on future TBRs to read. So we are going to try this again. So The Eye of the World is the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, which is a very famous series. There's a TV show based off of it now, but the books are very long. These are kind of like high fantasy epic books that follow a group of people as they go on a adventure and a quest. I was enjoying it up until where I had read it. I just ended up not DNFing it, but just kind of fell off reading it because I think I hit February and I was trying to get through my February TBR. So we'll give this another shot. This is a very long book. Hopefully this game is going to be nice to me the rest of the game, or else I may not end up finishing this TBR. So here we are, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I am excited to get back into this, especially since I'm already 200 pages down. Like I said, I did enjoy the book. It wasn't a DNF. It's just that other things caught up to me and I ended up not picking it up again. But now we did it at the beginning of the year in January, and hopefully we'll finish it at the end of the year in December. It's kind of like a nice little bookend for 2024. All right, but we are back at the beginning of the board, but since we landed on a boarding pass, that means we get to move up from a 8-sided die to a 12-sided die, so that is good. So let's go ahead and roll that die and see what we get for our fourth roll of the game. Or maybe 12-sided die wasn't so good. We rolled a 12 and we landed on another boarding pass. So we're just going to have to pull out the series jar one more time and, you know, read another book in our series. This game really wants me to get through the series for, you know, whatever reason. Oh, I didn't even put it away. It's right here. All right, here we go again. This is going to be our third book, or fourth book of the game. 3 of them are books from this jar, which is an interesting start to the game. All right, hopefully this book, if I get Mistborn, hopefully this book is easier than the last 2 I drew out of this jar. All right, I'll take this one. This is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. I actually have a hard copy of this book, so let me go grab that. So here is the book. So this is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik, and this is the second book in our School of Men series. I really enjoyed the first book, which was A Deadly Education. It follows Elle, who is sent to this dark school of magic where the only way to escape is graduation. And they have to face all these kind of like evil monsters that take over the school on purpose. Always been that way. To be able to graduate. So a lot of kids who end up at this school end up dying and not being able to get to graduation. So it's kind of like a high stakes school. And this is the second book in the series. And obviously I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to ruin the first book. But the first book did let off on a kind of cliffhanger. So I'm interested to see how that gets resolved in this second book. So I'm super excited to add this one to my TBR. And I've been wanting to read this for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it. And now it's on my TBR. So now I'm going to get to read the second book and see if I enjoy it as much as the first. So that is The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. And this is our fifth book on our TBR. Okay, so the one good thing about landing on a second boarding pass so early in the game is I get to move up to a 20-sided die. So that means there's a potential for this game to go really fast from now. So I'm actually kind of happy I did end up on that boarding pass when I think about it. So let's bring up the game board. Let's get our 20-sided die and see what we get for our sixth roll of the game, I think. No, our fifth roll of the game. All right, so we rolled a 10 and we are moving back 4 spaces because we landed on Time for Vacation. Like I said, I guess it's the end of the year and the game is like, you need to get through some of these series so we don't have to take them all into the new year. So let me grab that series jar one more time and see what we get for our fifth book of this game. All right, there's some really easy series in here that I'm hoping to get, like Artemis Fowl, or The Boxcar Children. Those books are super easy to read. And I think I also, well, I have like The Pretty Little Liars, which are quick books as well. So let's see if we can pull one of those. All right. We're going to go with this one here. And our fifth book of the game is going to be, well, wasn't one of those. This is Catherine of Aragon, which is the first book in the Six Tudor Queens series. So this is a historical fantasy series that each book follows one of the Tudor queens, and this one follows Catherine of Aragon. So Catherine of Aragon started her life as a princess of Spain known as Catalina, and at 16 years old, she ended up being sent to England. She ends up becoming betrothed to the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne of England, and that was Prince Arthur. But then tragedy ends up striking, and now Princess Catherine finds herself betrothed to the future Henry VIII. So she must wait till she becomes of age to be able to marry Prince Henry. And while the affection between the two is genuine, there's also things that are threatening to tear her future marriage as well as the nation apart. And now Catherine must be prepared to fight for her life. I get her life circumstances. I don't know. So that is the book. I'm excited to read this. It's been a while since I've gotten a good historical fantasy. I've had a lot of those. A good historical fiction book, especially one set in the Tudor age. I love historical fiction books set in England. So I'm excited to finish my 2024 with having a historical fiction book on this TBR. So that will be our fifth book, Catherine of Aragon. And that's the first book in the Six Tudor Queen series. So let's go ahead and move on to our sixth roll of the game and see what we get. All right, now we are finally moving forward. We rolled an 8, and that means we did not hit a Time for Vacation token. We did not hit a boarding pass. And that means we get to stay where we are, which is the first time in a while that we've been able to do that. So yay for us. We did end on a new release token, so that means we get to pull a book from our new release jar. So let me grab that real quick. All right, so here's our new release jar. Every 3 months, I make a video about the new releases I'm excited about that are coming out each season. And then I end up putting those books as they come out in here. So all my new releases I've been excited about for the past year are now in this jar. So any book I pull out of here is going to be a good one. So let's go ahead and see what our sixth book on this TBR is going to be. I'm excited about this. Is that 2? No, that's 1. All right, we're going with that one. All right, so our sixth book is going to be Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. Yay, so now we have a romance book on here. We're now getting some good mix in genres, which I'm excited about. Now, if only we can get some holiday books on this TBR as well. We'll see. Hopefully a future roll will allow us to do that. All right, so Happily Never After came out in March of this year. It's, like I said, a contemporary romance book that follows Sophie, who finds out right before she's about to get married that she's been cheated on again, and she's ready to take some drastic actions about this. So instead of calling the wedding off, she ends up hiring this stranger named Max, who will interrupt the ceremony and confront her fiance in front of all her guests, family, friends. This went so well that Max asked if Sophie would help him expose others for their cheating partners, and Sophie agrees to do this. So they end up being hired by a man who is supposed to be marrying Max's ex-fiance, and Sophie thought he would be so happy about this, but instead he is having kind of these different feelings for his ex, and Sophie also finds out that she's very jealous about these feelings Max is having. So this is kind of a friends to lovers trope, it says on the synopsis, so I'm excited for this one. I am happy to get kind of like a fun contemporary romance onto this, because there's several darker books on this TBR. So it's going to be nice to have kind of like a fun, happy, hopefully happy contemporary romance to break up those more darker reads. All right, so this game is slowly winning me back. I'm getting a little bit happier and happier each time I roll. So let's go ahead and do our 7th roll of the game and see what we land on. All right, we landed on red. We only rolled a 3, but again, we didn't land on anything that was going to scare us. And we get to draw a prompt card. So let me grab our bag that corresponds to that color, which happens to be the pink bag, and see what we get. All right, so here are our cards. These have our plot prompts, our series prompts, and our miscellaneous prompts. Let's go ahead and mix these up, and then we'll take our second prompt of the game. We've landed on a lot of jar pulls, which is fine with me because it's kind of nice to get some of those reads in as well. All right, so let's break the deck here, and this will be our prompt for this roll. It's a plot prompt, and it is a random genre. All right, so for random genre, I'm going to pull up a wheel, and we are going to spin it and see what genre we are going to read for this prompt. Well, let's think romance so we can get some holiday books on. All right, so here is our genre wheel. It has all the different genres I have on my TBR. So we are going to go ahead and spin it and see what genre we'll be reading for this prompt. So here we go. Oh my gosh, we got nonfiction. What are the chances of that? That is crazy to me. All right, well, I guess we'll be adding a nonfiction book onto our TBR. I don't know how I feel about this one. All right, let me look through. I know I have some nonfiction books. I don't have a lot, but let me take a look at them and see which one we should be adding on. So these are the two I have. The first is Housebroken, Confessions of a Stay-at-Home Dad, which is by David Eddy, who is a freewheeling comic novelist and kind of is a memoir about how he goes from being a bachelor to be able to, learn what he needs to do to cook, clean, raise a child. So that's our first option. Our second option is Two Histories of England, which are by Jane Austen and Charles Dickens. So one side is by Jane Austen, and then when you flip it around, we got the Charles Dickens. So this is a pretty short book. It's almost written for children. This is A Child's History of England. I picked this up at, looks like Barnes & Noble a long time ago for $5 because I felt it was kind of like an interesting book. I think I am going to go with this one. It's short. It should be a quick read. And I love, like I said before, I love reading about England, about the history of the country, partially because that is where my dad is from. So obviously I grew up in the US, so I got to learn a lot about US history, but not so much about English, British history. So I think that is a book we are going to go with, which is Two Histories of England by Jane Austen and Charles Dickens. So we'll put this one onto our TBR. Now we need to look at our Kindle book choices to see what book we'll add from there. So it ended up I did have a lot of books on my Kindle TBR list that were nonfiction, including a book on programming in C++, which we are definitely not going to choose that one for this prompt. I did find two good options, though, that I'm excited about both of them. The first is How the Scots Invented the Modern World by Arthur Herman, and kind of goes over the different interventions, the different inventions that Scottish people made that affected the world. And the second one is The Wars of the Roses by Dan Jones, which goes over, obviously, the War of the Roses, which was the fall of the, I don't even know how to say this one, Plantagenets, and the rise of the Tudors. So those are our two options. I know Dan Jones books are usually pretty good to read and entertaining to read. I've also heard good things about How the Scots Invented the Modern World. Since we have Catherine of Aragon and we're starting off kind of like the Tudors with that book, I think combining it with reading about the history of the War of the Roses that I think took place probably around then, I think I'm going to go with The War of the Roses by Dan Jones. I've been eyeing this book on my Kindle for a while now. It's a little intimidating reading some of these nonfiction books, especially historical nonfiction books. But now that my game is kind of pushing me in that direction, I think this is a good time to get this book onto my TBR. Plus, I think this is a good time because the physical book I have for this prompt is a little bit easier. So if I don't get to this, I can still read the physical book instead and still pass the TBR from that. So we will add The Wars of the Roses by Dan Jones as our 7th book on this TBR. All right, let's move on to our 8th roll of the game and see what we get. All right, so the game has decided to be nice to me. We rolled a 12, which means we are now past anything that could send us backwards in the game, which is super exciting because we are only on the 8th roll, and that means we will hopefully not have too many books on this TBR. And on top of that, we also landed on brown, which means we get to bring up our, or at least my favorite bag for this game. All right, so just as a reminder, this has our December prompts, our fall prompts, and our astrological signs of Sagittarius and Capricorn prompts. All right, let's see what we get. I'm excited for this. Hopefully we get a December prompt. We'll see. All right, I'm mixing these up. All right, let's split the deck right here, and this will be our 8th book, but our 3rd prompt of the game. And we got a December prompt, and it is set during a winter holiday. How perfect is that? We are going to get our holiday romance onto this TBR. I am so excited. This game has truly turned itself around. I am so happy with how this game is doing right now. All right, let me look on my physical bookshelf and see what options we have there first. All right, so I have 2 holiday books to choose from on my physical TBR. They are A Very Merry Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. This is actually the 4th book in the series. I haven't read any of the others, but I did hear that they are good standalone books. This book follows Colton, who is a country music singer, and he was dating Gretchen, but Gretchen ended up leaving him, and a year later, Colton is kind of struggling from that. Gretchen's also kind of having a hard time. She's not really excited about Christmas. So when her wealthy family reaches out to her with an offer that will allow her to better serve her community, she can't really say no, and all she has to do is convince Colton to be the new face of her family's whiskey brand. And that is how they end up meeting after they end up breaking apart. So that's our first option. Our second option is 8 Nights of Flirting by Hannah Reynolds. So this book takes place over Hanukkah, and it follows Shira and Tyler, who are kind of nemesis to each other. And they ended up getting snowed in together at the Golden Doors. And there they end up talking and striking a deal that Tyler will give Shira flirting lessons and Shira will give Tyler career connections. But then, things happen and Shira starts to see the sweet, funny boy beneath Tyler's playboy exterior. So those are two options. Now, here's the thing. So we'll be playing a holiday TBR game for the month of December that I'm super excited about. These two books both have potentials of coming up in that game. And I have to hopefully choose one of these books that will, and kind of guess and make a premonition of which of these two will or may show up in the game so I can, get a book off my TBR while I'm playing my holiday game. So this one's hard. I think I'm going to go with 8 Nights of Flirting by Hannah Reynolds, just because this is the fourth book in the series, and I know they say it's standalone, but it always makes you a little bit nervous to start with the fourth book in the series. So I would be more likely to choose this book in my holiday game than I would this one. So we'll go with this one, 8 Nights of Flirting by Hannah Reynolds, and this will be our, I don't even know, 8th book on our TBR. Now we just have to choose a Kindle one. So we have 5 options here to choose from. We have Christmas Every Day by Beth Morin, which is set in a cottage in Sherwood Forest in England. We have Once Upon a December by Amy E. Reichart, which is set at a Milwaukee Christmas market. These are all romances, obviously. We have The Last Phone Booth in Manhattan, which is obviously set in Manhattan. We have Never Kiss a Man in a Christmas Sweater, which I don't know where that's set, but it looks like on the snowy streets of Oxford. And then we have Christmas at the Lakeside Resort, which is set on a lake. So I really want to read a Christmas romance book set in England. So we are going to choose between Once Upon a December and Never Kiss a Man in a Christmas Sweater. So again, we have to think about which of these may end up on my holiday reading game. Once Upon a December is, like I said, set in... Oh no, not Once Upon December. It's Christmas Every Day. So Christmas Every Day follows Jenny, who inherits her grandmother's cottage in Sherwood Forest. And as she has nothing to lose, she doesn't have a job, not really any friends, no family to speak of. She feels like things can only get better. So she moves into this cottage, and her handsome new neighbor, Mac, has a habit of bestowing these unsolicited good deeds on her. Jenny ends up being welcomed into this unusual book club, and her life just finally seems to be getting more interesting. Instead of reading, though, the members of this book club have pledged to complete individual challenges before Christmas, from finding new love to learning to bake to completing a daredevil bucket list. And Jenny can't resist joining in. And that's what this book is about. And then Never Kiss a Man in a Christmas Sweater, which is by Debbie Johnson. So this book follows Maggie, and in their family, Christmas has always meant being with family. But this year, her daughter Ellen and her dad Patty are away for the holidays, and Maggie's feeling kind of like a true blue Christmas. Then she ends up walking the snowy streets of Oxford, and there she sees Marco Cavelli, who quite literally, crashes into her life and breaks his leg and becomes a unexpected house guest for her. And he happens to be wearing a Christmas sweater. So those are our 2 options. So both of these actually sound really good, and I really want to read both of them. But the book I think I'm going to put on the TBR is Christmas Every Day by Beth Morin, because it sounds kind of interesting how this book club are going to meet the challenges that they put forth on themselves, and I'm always up for a good challenge and seeing how it is fulfilled. So that will be our other option for this prompt, which is Christmas Every Day by Beth Morin, which obviously takes place at Christmas. So I'm excited to get those 2 onto my TBR, and hopefully they will come up on my holiday reading game as well. All right, let's bring up the game board and do our 9th roll of the game. I absolutely cannot believe it. We rolled a 20, which means we have completed the game in 9 rolls. I can't even think of the last time we had less than 10 books on our TBR. This TBR is definitely doable, and I think we are going to complete it this month, as long as we complete the Wheel of Time. But before we finish up this game, we do have to pull our last book, which will come from our Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning / award nominee jar. So in here are 75 books that have either won or been nominated for the Locust, Nebula, Hugo, or Golden Duck Award. And there's just a wide mixture in here. And I'm excited to see which one we are going to draw this time. All right, let's go with this one here in my finger, right here. I never know what I'm going to draw out of this jar. All right, here is our final book for December and our final book for 2024. And it is John Scalzi's Old Man's War. All right, so this book is the first book in John Scalzi's series, Old Man's War, which is a pretty popular series. It actually has a pretty good ratings on Goodreads of 4.23, having over 205,000 ratings, which is crazy. And I think this is a pretty popular book and most people enjoy reading it. So this is a science fiction book, and when people reach retirement age on Earth, they are now able to join the Colonial Defense Force, which is a force that goes out into interstellar space to find planets that they can colonize. They want people who carry the knowledge and skills of decades of living. So you'll be taken from Earth and never allowed to return, and you'll serve 2 years at the front. And if you survive, you'll be given a generous homestead stake of your own on one of their hard-won colony planets. So it's a very interesting premise that these retirement age people are leaving Earth, going out, serving on the front lines, and then getting to retire on a colony world. I keep wanting to say colonial. So this book was actually a Hugo and Locust Award nominee, and that is why it's in our jar. So I'm excited to read this one. Like I said, from the people who have read it, I've heard good things about it. And it's been a while since I've had a good science fiction book on my TBR, so I'm excited to get this one on as well. So that actually completes our December 2024 TBR. Like I said, I cannot believe we only have 9 books to read. This game started off a little bit mean, but what it did do was let me start rolling with the 20-sided die pretty early, and that helped us complete this game in record time. So let's go through our books and see what we'll be reading in December. So we'll start off with our physical books. It looks like such a short stack. There's only 4 physical books on the TBR. But that's because we drew a lot of books, Kindle books from our jars. All right, so here we go. So first up, we have a paranormal book, and we have either Ghosts in the Snow or Wisteria Wonders. Next, we had a random genre, and we got nonfiction. So we'll either be reading The Two Histories of England by Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, or The War of the Roses by Dan Jones. Then we got our next prompt, which is set during a winter holiday, and we will be reading 8 Nights of Flirting, which is set at Hanukkah, or Christmas Every Day, which is set at Christmas. Next, we drew from the series jar, and we got The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. All right, then we have all our Kindle ones. We have Happily Never After by Lynn Painter, which was from our new release jar. We have The Eye of the World, which is book 1 in The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. This is going to be the one that causes the most trouble on this list. Then we had The Dark Forest, which is book 2 in the Remembrance of Earth series, also from our series jar. Then we had Catherine of Aragon by Alison Weir, also from our series jar. And last but not least, Old Man's War by John Scalzi, which is from our Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning / nominee jar. So I am excited for so many of these books. I feel like we got such a well-rounded TBR. We have historical fiction books, we have nonfiction, we have some fantasy, some science fiction, and some romance. The only one we really don't have is a mystery book, but I read so many mystery books in November, I am okay with that. Like I said, I think the one that's going to be most challenging is finishing up Eye of the World. But with only having 9 books on this TBR, I think it is definitely doable, especially since I'm already 200 pages into it. Oh, and it's right here. I forgot to pull that one. Eye of the World. Let's put that on our pile as well. So 234 pages into it. So I think we'll be okay. I have good faith that I will get through this TBR and we will pull one of those boarding passes off of it to start off the new year in January. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed playing it. I had so much fun and I am super excited about this TBR. Upcoming videos from me will be a holiday reading game, which again, I'm super excited about that one as well. I have holiday romances, holiday mysteries, and kind of this hodgepodge of holiday books that are potential reads on that game. And I cannot wait to play it. I'll also be putting out my 25 books to read in 2025 video. And I haven't chosen which books are going to go on that yet. So if you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I hope everyone enjoys their December, enjoys their holiday season. And if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to see future videos by me, including TBR and reading games, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for joining me and watching this video. And please let me know what's on your December TBR in the comments below. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Enjoy the holidays. Bye.